In the old Christian graveyards of New England, there was a rule. It was written down nowhere, but everyone knew it. The last person buried in a graveyard was never granted rest. Until the next body was lowered into the ground, that soul had to stand watch at the gate, in the dark, alone, as a guardian. They called it the graveyard watcher. When I took a job as a night shift gravedigger at a 200-year-old church cemetery in Massachusetts, I laughed these stories off. The dead don't keep watch over anyone. The dead rot quietly beneath the earth. That's the rule. But that night, when the clock read exactly 2 minutes past 3, 6 feet beneath the soil, my shovel struck a black coffin that appeared in no record anywhere. And from inside that sealed coffin, someone, very slowly, very patiently, began to scratch their fingernails against the wood. That was when I understood. Some souls don't go quiet beneath the grave. They simply wait, year after year, waiting to trap someone new in their place. Welcome, friend. Tonight feels a little too quiet, doesn't it? The air outside seems a little too cold. The story we're about to hear was sent to us by a man named Samuel, who once worked digging graves at an old church in New England. His letter ended with a strange request, that I read the story all the way to the end, because the final words, he says, are something everyone needs to know. So lock your door, turn the lights down low, and listen, in Samuel's own words, to the story of that cursed night. Blackwood Chapel. The church stood at the very edge of a forgotten little town in Massachusetts, and behind it, ringed by a rusted iron fence, lay the graveyard. Let me tell you one thing about that place first. Sound never carried right there. I mean, if you struck one stone against another, the noise that should have rung out, in Blackwood it was as if something swallowed it whole. The pines stood around in silence, their needles never stirring, and the old, crumbling stone crosses were always wrapped in a wet, gray mist, even in summer. My job was simple. When someone died, I'd dig the grave, lower the body, and before I left at night, lock the iron gate. There was only one thing I never understood. The lock on that gate faced inward, as if it wasn't meant to keep someone out, but to keep something in. That afternoon, the old priest called me over and told me a woman from town had died. Her body would arrive at dawn. The grave had to be dug that night. I asked him where to dig. He paused, then with a trembling finger, he pointed to the very last row of the graveyard. The row where, to this day, not a single grave had ever been dug, entirely empty. I was surprised. There was plenty of open ground near the front. Why all the way back there, in the dark? He looked into my eyes. His voice suddenly dropped very low. He said, "That row has been kept empty for many years, Samuel, but now the time has come. It must be filled." I didn't understand what he meant. I thought, he's an old man just speaking in riddles. I should have understood. It was 1 a.m. There was a full moon, but thick clouds had buried it. Everything was a dim, smoky dark. With a shovel in one hand and an old hurricane lantern in the other, I walked out to that last row of the graveyard. The lantern's yellow light reached only a few feet in every direction. Beyond that, only darkness. I began to dig. 1 foot, the sound of the blade cutting earth, and my own breathing. 2 feet, beads of sweat on my forehead, and yet the air was growing colder, unnaturally cold. 3 feet, and that was when it struck me. There were no other sounds at all. No crickets, no leaves rustling in the wind, nothing. As if the whole world were holding its breath, watching me. I stopped for a moment, wiped my brow, told myself, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's just a grave. I've dug 1,000 of them. 4 feet, 5 feet, and then, at exactly 6 feet down, my shovel struck not soft earth, but something hard and heavy. Wood, a hollow, deep sound, as if something below were empty. I froze. There shouldn't have been any grave in this row. The priest himself had said it had been empty for years. So where had wood come from? 6 feet beneath the soil. I knelt down and lowered the lantern into the hole. And what I saw turned my hands and feet to ice. A coffin beneath the earth. But no ordinary coffin. The wood was pitch black, as if someone had burned it black in a fire. No nameplate on it. No cross carved into it. No handles. And the strangest thing of all, there wasn't a single speck of dirt clinging to it. A coffin pressed under 6 feet of soil for ages, and yet it was so clean, so smooth, as if someone had set it there only the evening before. Out of curiosity, I began brushing the loose dirt off the top of the coffin with my hand. And right then, the sound came. Scratch. I stopped. Thought, maybe it was just the dirt shifting. Scratch, scratch. No, clearer now. That wasn't dirt. That sound was coming from inside the coffin. Someone from inside that sealed coffin was scratching their fingernails against the wood. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I held my breath and listened, and then the blood in my whole body ran cold, because I realized the sound wasn't random. It had a rhythm to it, a patience, as if whoever was inside was in no hurry, as if they knew. I couldn't run. With a shaking hand, I tapped the coffin lid, very gently with the handle of my shovel. I don't even know why I did it. Knock, and at once, the scratching inside stopped. Total silence. That was even more terrifying, because now I was certain. The thing inside had heard me. It knew I was there, and it was waiting to answer. I couldn't take it anymore. Gripping the shovel, I scrambled out of the hole in one motion, clawing at the dirt, kicking, dragging myself up. My chest was pounding so hard I thought my ribs would crack and burst. Gasping, I tried to convince myself. It's a rat. Surely some rat got into the coffin. The dead don't scratch. The dead don't fall silent the moment you knock. But my body knew. It was no rat. As I stood at the edge of the hole, trembling, the air around me stopped. The faint breeze that had been moving before, it died too. The air turned heavy, congealed, hard as glass all around me. And in that dead silence, a new sound came from inside the coffin. A long, wet, rasping breath, as if someone, after long, long years, had drawn air into their lungs for the very first time. And then, in that dry, cracked voice, through the wooden wall of the coffin, a whisper drifted out, very slowly, very calm. Is it time? I didn't answer. I couldn't. No sound would come from my throat. Then the voice came again, and this time it called me by my name. Samuel, have you come to take my place? My name. How did it know my name? The lantern slipped from my hand in terror. The glass shattered, and the flame went out. And at once the whole graveyard drowned in pitch darkness. Only a pale, bloodless shaft of moonlight fell through a gap in the clouds, onto that open grave, and nowhere else. I pulled the phone from my pocket and tried to turn on the flashlight, but my fingers were shaking so badly with fear that the screen kept slipping from my grasp. And just then, in the phone's faint glow, I looked toward the row of pines at the back of the graveyard, and my heart seemed to stop. Out of the mist, someone was walking toward me. It wore an old, torn, long black coat, but it wasn't quite walking. It seemed to glide over the ground very slowly without ever taking a step. And the most terrifying thing was its face. In the moonlight I saw, it had no eyes. Where the eyes should have been, there were only two deep, black, empty sockets. And yet I could feel clearly that those two empty sockets were looking straight at me, as if it didn't need eyes to see, as if it were seeing me some other way, seeing my fear, seeing my soul. The closer it came, the colder the air grew, so cold that my breath came out as white smoke and my teeth chattered. It slowly stretched a hand out toward me, long, dry fingers, reaching for me. And at that very moment, behind me, the lid of that black coffin beneath the earth, with a violent, wood-splitting crack, swung open all by itself. I caught one glimpse inside that open coffin. It was empty, no one there. But pressed into the soft, torn lining was the imprint of a human body, as if someone had lain there all this time and had risen only a moment ago. And that empty space inside, it seemed to be waiting for me. I didn't wait another second. Shovel, lantern, phone. I dropped it all and ran blindly for the main gate, stumbling over the stone crosses in the dark, falling, scrambling up again. There were no footsteps behind me. It made no sound, but I could feel it, that ice-cold air right at the back of my neck, almost brushing my collar, as if a cold hand might seize me from behind at any moment. And in my ears that whisper rang on and on. "Take my place, Samuel. Take my place." Somehow I got through the gate and into my car. With a shaking hand, I turned the key and started the engine. The car began to move, and then for the last time, I looked into the rearview mirror. What I saw, I have never been able to forget. That eyeless figure in the black coat stood just inside the iron gate of the graveyard. The gate was open, the way was clear, but it would not take a single step beyond it. It only stood there, watching me leave, with those two empty sockets. It could not cross the boundary of the gate. It was trapped there, had been for 200 years. And I, without knowing it, had thrown away its one chance at freedom and run. The next morning, Samuel didn't dare go back alone. He took the old priest and a few men from town with him and returned to the graveyard. Together they walked up to that open grave and stood around it. The grave lay exactly as he'd left it, still dug open. But 6 feet down, there was no coffin, no black wood, no lid, nothing. Only at the very bottom of the hole, set into the earth, was an old, rust-eaten iron cross, and carved into it was a name and a year. Died, 1792, and just below it a single line, "The Watcher of this ground." Samuel stood looking into the old priest's face, and the priest, very softly as if to himself, said, "That row has been empty for 200 years, Samuel, because in all that time, no one could be set in its place. No dead man can free it. To be freed, it needs a living person, someone who, of their own will, with their own voice, agrees to take its place." That same day, Samuel quit his job. He left that town and never went back. But he ended his letter with a warning, and I promised I would pass his words on to you. He wrote, "That old churchyard in Massachusetts still stands. New graves are still dug there. And to this day, those who pass it at midnight say, 'Beyond the locked gate, in the mist, an eyeless figure in a black coat stands silently, waiting.'" And Samuel says, if ever, in the dead of night, while passing an old graveyard, you hear the sound of scratching, or a dry whisper drifts up from beneath the soil, asking, "Is it time? Have you come to take my place?" Then whatever you do, do not answer. Because the moment you speak a single word in reply to that question, yes or no, or even just, "Who's there?" in that moment, you have agreed. And then the next watcher of Blackwood Chapel will be you. Well, friend, that's where the story ends. I know that tonight, every small sound outside your room might suddenly seem a little different. What do you think? Can the souls of the dead truly be bound to a single place? Or was it all the imagination of one frightened man's mind? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because many more dark nights are waiting for us. And one last thing, tonight before you go to sleep, if you hear a scratching outside your window, don't answer. Good night. Stay safe out there.